This bitch trying to shoot him, the other one's trying to cut him up with a switchblade. Punches this dude in the face that has the gun. Oh, dude, he just broke a chair over that chick's face. Luckily for these dudes, these chicks are a terrible shot. They're in the same room together, she can't hit the broadside of a barn. Now, what are you chewing up, you crazy little dog? What is she chewing up now, dude?
Her little bone I gave her.
She cut me, man.
We gotta hold ourselves together. We got to. See, man, if we go to pieces, somebody out there is gonna get us.
You think we shot Cyrus? What are you talking about? I don't get it. You think we shot Cyrus? Every gang in the city must be looking for us. We're not gonna be able to make it back.
Not bad, actually.
Back. We came this far, and we're gonna go the rest of the way. Let's go to Union Square, okay? We gotta tell the rest of the guys.
Oh, it's been so successful that even I am
That's
like,
what it is. The fucking movie. Shit.
Subway.
Right.
Guy that choked out that guy and killed him, though.
okay, thanks.
The guy
Dr.
that
Disrespect
did,
got
like the literally killed a guy.
Rear naked choke till he was dead. Other dudes hold him down, too.
Yeah, Dr. Disrespect wasn't calling me a fat phony, like a big fat phony. He was calling me fat, it turns out. Which is really weird because, like, objectively speaking, as much body dysmorphia as I have, like, most people will look at him and go, what? Like, they would look at him and go, what are you saying, bro? Like, I have body dysmorphia. I am insecure, and I have gained a lot of weight during COVID, but I have worked for 2 years now to do recomp, and I feel like it's been so successful that even I am like, okay, thanks. Dr. Disrespect got dad bod compared to you, bro. No, he's probably in better shape than me. I said that already before. I mean, I don't really give a shit though, but play the clip though. He's so butthurt. Yeah, I heard he was crying. I mean, I want to do like fun shit though. I don't really give a fuck about Dr. Disrespect crying about me. He is a 45-year-old man. I don't know why he's like still doing cosplay and also crying about a joke that everyone has made. He needs to, you know, nut up or shut up. You know what I mean? Dude, log off, dude. Log off. Is it that bad? Is it that hard for you? You're gonna cry? Is that what you're gonna do? Dr. Disrespect, you're gonna cry more? He's fat. Is that what you're gonna do? You're 45 years old, you got children. Okay? It's a joke that every single mother internet has made 1,000,000 times over. Okay? He, him in the bio. Cry a little bit more, little piss baby. You gonna wet your diaper? Huh? 55-year-old man with a wife he cheated on and children. What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, Jesus. Dr. Piss Inspect. He's gonna get mad at that too. Like, it's like the 2-time cheated on his wife joke is such a meta joke. So it's almost cringe to even bring it up. But now he's like unironically resurfacing it and having like a Streisand effect on the whole like Dr. Disrespect cheated on his wife situation. Like, no one, if he just like let it go, absolutely zero motherfucker to giving a shit. And now he's just like crying about it on the timeline endlessly. So now everyone's like, wait, Dr. Disrespect cheated on his wife? Like, why are you resurfacing it? You're literally 67 years old. But yeah, I wonder if he'll get mad at me for saying Dr. Piss Inspect next. You know what I mean? I filmed at a bathroom, made some stupid mistakes. But yeah, here he can't let it go. I don't know why. I don't know why he can't let it go, but it's really weird. I think in a lot of situations, here, I'll show you the clip and we'll do that. We'll do the drama real quick and then we'll move on from it. I think a lot of people online think that if you like shit on someone like me, people will forget that you're like a bad person or you've done something bad, like you've made stupid mistakes, right? But no, like you've been a content creator for much longer than me. It's like Trainwrecks keeps forgetting that. You know what I mean? Trainwrecks keeps forgetting that. Dr. Disrespect keeps forgetting that. Whenever these guys like try to pull the Hassan parachute, it doesn't work because, dog, you have more haters than I do. You know what I mean? And way more publicly. Like my haters hate me because of my politics. So do you think it's the joke or because you're the one who told it? Doesn't seem like there's a way out of it doesn't seem like a way out there totally out of bounds jab. Yeah, no, I think it's because, yeah, I'm a good villain for him. But what he didn't realize is that like most people are going to clown on him because he looks like a baby in the situation. Like, look, this is what he said.
I got no. My favorite content creator is Hassan. Even though he's fat and he's got weird looking structure of shoulders and he's unathletic. But he's real.
Dude, this is such a. This is literally like a elbows too pointy. She's a fucking 4 meme, you know what I mean? But like the male on male version of that. King, out here, we bring each other up, okay? Fellas, this is a broadcast for the fucking boys, okay?
Teeth showing.
We will not be sitting here and tolerating this kind of weird slander about men's bodies from a 67-year-old man, okay?
Of shoulders and he's unathletic.
I think my man's a little bit jelly beans that I am like probably twice his width, you know? Because he's like, his shoulders. He's fat, I promise. Guys, he's really fat. You wouldn't dare say that shit to me in land, dude. It's even funnier when you see his chat. The Normans have no idea what he's talking about. Yeah, like, it's like divorced dads and like cops and shit that are watching Dr. Disrespect play Call of Duty. They're like, I don't know what the fuck this guy's talking about. Yeah, you're right, brother. He is fat. This Hassan guy. I bet he's fucking fat. You're right. And it's like the dude watching is just so rotund and so oblivious. He's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Anyway, let's keep going.
But he's really fat.
I want to run this part back.
Fat and he's got weird looking structure of shoulders and he's unathletic. But he's really fat. He's my favorite content creator. I got nothing going on. I'm so depressed. I got a chip on my shoulder. I'm critical of everything except myself. I got him in my bio, and I know. Oh God. Oh God.
Is the volume working?
Okay, the bit goes on for a little bit too long, but I don't know why. It's weird because like, I mean, I get why a lot of people like him. I get why a lot of people watch him. Like, obviously, we are very far apart on politics. I would go so far as to say the same exact thing about Nick Merckx as well. But there's something very funny about the way he operates. I don't know what it is. Like when he when he like says all of these things, I think it's really funny. I almost want to keep continuing the beef with him because he's just so goofy.
Annabelle.
Like, dog, you're 67 years old with like children. You're about to have grandchildren. What are you doing? But yeah, he's a great entertainer. I don't agree with him ideologically, but he's a great watch. Yeah, I get it. Like, I know. Nick Works revealed you said that on Doc's wedding anniversary and made it 100 times funnier. Yeah, that part of the saga was really funny. It's just like the reason I think he's like pulling the fucking fuck Hassan parachute is because like they think that there's a tap there, you know what I mean? There's like an endless supply of content that you can get out of it. But like the more you fucking cry about stuff like this, the worse it's gonna look for you because people are gonna look at that and go, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And then he hit the him in the bio part. I'm critical of everything except myself is the only funny bit. The left can sometimes be guilty of that. Another Asmongold W on this, by the way. Saw that. Let me see what.
I mean, is it mean for Hassan to say that? Like, yeah, for sure it's mean to say that, but like, I mean, Doc made a really bad decision, and he cheated on his fucking wife. Hassan is not obligated to be nice to Dr. Disrespect.
Yeah.
Am I crazy? Like, I mean, we joked about the Doc cheating all the time. They joke about that shit constantly. Everybody's gonna go and act like Hassan did that, and now he's the worst guy ever. Holy shit,
dude! I love how quickly and how like mathematically he eviscerated the entire argument. Like he's like, what are we doing? Like, what are you fucking nuts? Like, did you forget what platform we're on? Like, Hassan invented making fun of Doc cheating on his wife. Like, there are so many angles that is hilarious about this because, like, I'm imagining a guy who does, like, security for a mall, who watches Dr. Disrespect at night, you know, to unwind or whatever, just shaking his, like, little potato fingers at me, his stubby little fucking potato hands, where the ring is like exploding his fucking hands a little bit, going, I'm more mad about this Hassan guy saying the Dr. Disrespect shit instead of like Dr. Disrespect cheating on his wife. That's fine. The cheating scandal predates you streaming? Yeah, exactly. Also, didn't you just read a message from chat? I did, but I'll own it. I put my face on it. Even though I read it from a chat, I think it's cowardly to say, oh, I just read it from the chat. That's why I didn't actually clarify or explain to people that like, it wasn't my joke. Like, I don't really care. I wanted to stand by it. And that's precisely why I was like, no, I'll take the heat. Yeah, I read it and I'll own it because I don't think it's bad.
Yeah, it's just not that big of a deal. You tell him to talk shit about another person's wife? I mean, he didn't talk shit about his wife. He talked shit about how he treated his wife. I think that's very different, personally. I would say that's different.
Yeah, look, they're still trying to debate him in the chat at that point. There's motherfuckers like, well, he talked shit about Dr. Disrespect's wife. I never did. No, I never did that. And I love that he just very confidently goes, no. I think the doc is just teasing you. I partially think the doc is teasing me as well. I think, but I don't know. At first, I thought he was like, I don't know. I'm going back and forth on it. I don't know if he's like having fun with it because it is kind of his persona. And if that's the case, then that's great. I love it. There's something very appealing about, you know, the way he carries himself. I think it's like he's a great entertainer. Totally understand why people like him. Totally understand why people watch him. So on that front, I guess, you know, maybe it's a bit of both. I can't tell. It all makes sense. Oh, for the record, dude, that's awesome. Yeah. What was I gonna say? He follows End Wokeness, the account that's like, the account that's like randomly taking photos of people's children and being like, these children look kind of gay. Why is that allowed? And then like, it's got like 100,000 likes, and I'm sitting there looking at this like, why is this politics? What are you doing? Like, Elon Musk's Twitter is so insane that like, there's accounts like End Wokeness on the fucking platform now that get like 700,000 likes for being like, black people sure are genetically violent, huh? And then everyone's like, dude, this is the greatest information I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, click, retweet. Like, they do race science on there, which whatever. I don't give a fuck about follow policing. That shit's pretty funny.
The whole bag of
dude, this.
You're sparingly.
Which, by the way, is this is objectively the worst graph on the fucking planet, and they did it in the worst way possible. I've addressed it before. I've addressed the information, the data on this before. But anyway, what are we doing? What are we doing? They're trying to cis my gender. I'm fucking trailing away. I wanted to finish this goddamn Asmongold clip. I couldn't even fucking do that.
Yeah, it's just not that big of a deal. You tell him to talk shit about another person's wife? I mean, he didn't talk shit about his wife. He talked shit about how he treated his wife. I think that's very different, personally.
Yeah, why would I talk shit about Dr. Disrespect's wife? I don't know anything about her, other than literally what Dr. Disrespect has done to her. So
I also don't think that Hassan like really was like looking at a clock and he was like, "Oh shit, it's their anniversary. Like, let's."
It's such a good take. Like, why would I know that? Like, why would I know that it's Dr. Disrespect's anniversary with his wife? Like, people shaking their fist online. People who claim, like, you wouldn't survive in a Call of Duty lobby, shaking their fists online going, not on his anniversary. The fuck? Bill got a crit on accident? Yeah, literally. On the anniversary with his wife that he cheated on, for the record.
What?
Nick said he texted you after lol. Did you reply? He unfollowed me before I could. I at that point, my interest in the situation was not about Dr. Disrespect at all. Because, like, I was just trying to get a better assessment of where he's coming from, and also trying to, like, get him to not say these things. You know what I mean? I was like, what are you doing? So I didn't really give a shit about the Dr. Disrespect thing, but he's right. Nick Merckx did DM me, like, the same thing he said on stream, where, what did he fucking DM me? I mean, it was pretty funny. I got to do the YDSA call right now, which is a hilarious way to jump from drama to like something serious that I think is important. But yeah, I will say this. Nick Merckx was not lying. He said, what you said about Doc was fucked up. It's dude's anniversary with his wife at 7 a.m.
The world. The world.
What are you?
After you insulted me.
What do you mean? How have I assaulted you?
Insulted me.
Wait, how did I insult you? Do you understand the difference between a policy position versus like an epistemic statement or like a moral statement?
Yes,
on
I'm
what
not.
might be?
I'm not a moron. Thank you.
Okay.
I
well,
love how
then
you word
I don't.
these
Well,
questions. Like,
I don't know
do
why
you understand there's a difference between the color blue and the color purple?
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never talked to a misogynistic man like this before.
Okay.
She's just accused you of being misogynistic. I mean, do you have a response to that?
I am. Wouldn't that be the equivalent of a woman leaving a child starving to death on their floor?
No, absolutely not.
No.
How dare you?
Hold on. Can you answer
First
the
of all,
question before she moral
no.
Arguing the pro-choice personality, live streamer, and political commentator who will be arguing the pro-choice side. And we have Kristen Hawkins. She's the president of Students for Life of America, a nonprofit pro-life organization. And Lila Rose, she's the founder and president of the pro-life organization Live Action. And we were going to have someone else on Destiny's side, but unfortunately, they backed out kind of last minute. So Destiny, this is going to be a 2v1.
I prefer to characterize my position as pro-abortion, not pro-choice. Okay.
Very honest.
Okay.
Very honest.
That's,
Thank you.
that's a
Okay.
clarification. Thank you.
Got it. So I think a good jumping off point, if each of you would like to summarize beyond just being either pro-choice or pro-life, or in your case, pro-abortion or anti-abortion, what is your basic stance on abortion?
My basic stance is we try to figure out what is a person, what makes a person. Person is granted some positive, some negative rights by governments, and probably morally and ethically separate from governments, we also grant people some type of right. I don't believe that a person is a collection of cells. I don't believe that a person is just a body with a brain. I think that very specifically when we speak about a person, we speak about something that has the capacity to deploy a conscious experience, because that tends to be the thing that we're usually talking about when we're figuring out if somebody's alive or dead, or whether or not somebody ought to be protected. When we say a person, when we say who is suffering, we don't say what is suffering. We're not talking about a body. We're not talking about a heartbeat. We're talking about a person having an experience. So when I try to think of abortion, I try to think of who is being harmed. I would say that for 20 to 24 weeks, that's about when the scientists say that the brain has all the parts necessary to begin communicating, to have a conscious experience, that about at that point, there is some experience there that we can speak of as a who or as a person. But prior to that, the first trimester, that really experience is not happening yet. So if you want to have an abortion, there is no who that's being harmed. There's just a what, which is whatever the body is up to that point. So generally, I'm pro-choice the first abortion up until that conscious experience has been formed, because I think that's what's worth protecting, because that's when we look to see when somebody's dead. So that's what we should look to see when somebody's alive.
So are you anti-abortion after 20 or 24 weeks?
Yeah, after 20 to 24 weeks.
And all abortions, anti-all abortions after 20 to 24 weeks.
With the obvious exceptions of like ectopic pregnancies or life of the mother or something like that being threatened, yeah. Yeah. Easy, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Okay.
And your positions
So
on...
we share a position, but Kristen, I'm sure will have
Yeah.
have her way she wants to describe it. I think that all humans have human rights.
Sure.
By nature of being a human, you are a member of the human family, and so any member of the human family, and this is actually the preamble of the Declaration on Universal Human Rights by the United Nations. So for those that think they have any authority, I don't know if you do, Destiny, they say that all members of the human family deserve to be protected and treated by the law as persons. And so if you're a member of the human family, you have human rights. And we know when you become a member of the human family, it's at the moment of fertilization. It's very clear. A single cell embryo comes into existence. And so I believe human rights for all humans. And I also want to build a society of love and justice. And the way to do that is to treat people equally under the law and to protect the most vulnerable, especially children. Children deserve more protection actually than adults because they are defenseless. And so we should actually go out of our way to do what we can to protect children and never commit homicide against them. So that's my pro-life position.
Cool.
Yeah, I share Lila's position. I'm against the strong being able to choose whether or not the weak or the vulnerable get to live or die based on someone else's perception of them or their convenience factor to another person. I think that's a very slippery slope, and I actually think the position you represented is a very dangerous one, because what you're saying is you have to be not only a member of our species in order to be a person with rights, the very basic right to life, but you have to be a person plus. And it's a very exclusionatory class of what you're doing. You're excluding a whole group of human beings. So I guess my question is, Are there other human beings you would exclude that you don't view Destiny as persons?
Not for this debate. No, I'm just kidding. Here's a question, actually. Let me respond to your question with a question. You guys say that humans are protected. Do you agree with that? That humans ought to be protected, or humans are given?
More specifically, humans have human rights. So
Yeah,
protection
okay.
can mean different things. But
Humans have human rights.
The fundamental human right is the right to not be killed.
Okay.
It's the right to be protected against the right to life. And so that's why I don't have the right to commit homicide against you, Destiny, or against you, Kristen, or against you, Brian, and certainly not against a preborn developing child.
Okay.
And yeah, but I have a question for you too, but I know we all have questions for each other, but I'll let you.
Sure, yeah, because I'm going to keep going on this.
Yeah.
I don't believe that you believe in that statement, that humans have a right to life. So my next question would be, I show you a human who's been dead for 10 days. The corpse is still a human, we agree, right?
I think to clarify, a right to life meaning a right to not be killed, not a right not to be killed.
It's fundamentally different, abortion and end of life care. I watched one of your debates this morning when I was on the plane coming here, and I found it interesting because you kept using this end of life and argument. You fundamentally have a right not to be killed. Abortion is an active killing. It's an active dismemberment. It's actually a violent ending for another human being. So morally, that act of abortion is much different than someone who maybe is brain dead, or we're not sure their brain activity that's been in a hospital for 3 months. That's a much different position to take, because you're not actively killing that person. You may say we have to withdraw life support for this reason, or the doctor may say we have this reason to believe this person is brain dead, but you're not actively killing. You don't say, well, they're going to die, so I'm going to take a gun and put it through the person's head. We would not say that. We would say we might withdraw life support and see if the person can sustain life on his or her own, but we're not going to actively dismember them in the process or violently kill them in the process. But that's exactly what abortion is. It's not just easily withdrawing life support. It's actively going into a womb where there's a developing human being that biologist tells us is a unique, whole, living human being that's never existed before and will never exist again, and it's actively killing them.
Okay, I don't believe that you believe in that argument. If I were to show you that all abortions could be done by just extracting the baby and then leaving it on the table and not actively killing it, but just removing it from the mother's life support and seeing what happens, would you be okay with that?
That is actively killing
That
it.
is killing it.
Because
How is that actively killing any more than pulling a plug on
Destiny,
somebody?
you know this, you're a parent. Children are dependent on their parents. A newborn is dependent on his or her parents, and
Yeah.
a preborn child is dependent on his or her mother.
I understand. I'm just challenging the words we're using here, the difference between active and passive killing.
The dependency of a child doesn't give their parents or anyone else the right to kill that child.
Sure, I never said as much. I was just challenging.
Well, you do say as much, I think, because I think your position is if that dependent child before the arbitrary line of 20 to 24 weeks is in any way unwanted, inconvenient, just for whatever reason abortion is chosen for that child, then you are okay with a parent killing their child.
Depends on what video games the child plays. No, the only thing I'm trying to figure out right now is
But are you okay with that? Because I think that was what you said earlier.
I don't know what. So right now I'm just trying to figure out what your position is. So
oftentimes, we're trying to figure out your position too. So
I already get my position with crystal clear.
But it actually wasn't
a little
unclear.
unclear.
It wasn't actually clear, Destiny, because when
Okay, wait, hold on, wait, just because, hold on, wait, hold on, just because I got cut off like 7 times and I haven't responded. So just to be very clear, to give you an idea of like what I'm trying to establish right now, when I have conversations with people that are pro-life, there's a lot of dancing between words that I think deserve distinct definitions. Human, I think, is distinctly different from person. I think it's distinctly different from life. I think it's distinctly different from child. But all of these things, when we're talking pro-life, tend to just get thrown together. Like, oh, well, we should defend all human people and children are worthy of life. And a lot of these statements are almost begging the question. Obviously, anything that you would consider a child deserves rights to life, right? But that's what's
pro-lifers believe human beings are persons.
Yeah.
What you're arguing is that some human beings don't deserve personhood rights.
But what I'm trying
which
to do,
throughout history, Destiny, has always proved to be a very dangerous position that you're taking.
Yeah, I understand the analogies of slavery we're trying to draw here, but what I'm just trying to figure out is because
But can you respond to that? Because I think let's just take it one step at a time, because
I think fundamentally there's a difference between saying a fetus hasn't developed the cognitive parts yet to recognize it as living versus saying black people and white people are different types of things.
Let's address consciousness for a minute, because my understanding is you're saying...
Okay, if you want, hold on real quick. If you want, we can leave to my position if you want. I still have no idea what you guys believe, but we can leave for mine if you want.
Well,
I'll just say it again. I mean, we can say it slower for you.
What I heard you say is that like children should have rights and shouldn't be killed, which I think we all agree.
Any human life has the right to not be killed.
Yeah.
Any
Well, yeah,
human
but
life
then
is
you
the right
also
to not
try
be
to draw,
killed.
when you said not be killed, you try to draw a distinction between like active and passively killing.
No, you cannot.
She did.
You
Because she said there was a difference between pulling the plug on grandpa versus actively killing.
the intentional
a fetus.
destruction of an innocent human life is
Sure,
is
but
what
I was
we
saying that like
oppose.
unplugging grandpa would be kind of like unplugging a baby. You're disconnecting both from a life support thing.
No, because a baby belongs, a preborn baby belongs before development
He or
and able
she's
to
right
be
where
born
she's supposed to
belongs
be.
in his or her mother's womb.
Sure, I understand, but
So
that means
it's
there's
a
probably
natural,
ways
it's a
to.
natural habitat.
Sure, that's a fundamentally different thing. There's probably ways to passively kill children that we would agree is also wrong. Just because you're actively versus passively doing something,
Well,
that's
it's
not
about.
going to be.
I think intention matters too.
Yeah.
Sure, it
So,
absolutely can be.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But that's important to qualify. We can't just say like passively
Sure.
killing somebody is fundamentally different from actively killing somebody. Therefore, one is described like moral weight and the other isn't. Because if you starve a
Well,
child
I
to death,
think
that's
there's-
passive, but that's also
I
bad,
think
right?
there's a few other things you have to get into and what you mean by passive or active.
Sure, I agree. That's what I'm
So-
trying to get into. But you can ask me a question if you want. I'll just
Okay,
I can pause
I
it.
do have a
Yeah, go
question
ahead.
about consciousness.
Yeah, go for
because
it.
my understanding is that's your big line.
Mm-hmm.
That if there's suddenly consciousness, then they are a person. They're not
Mm-hmm.
just a human, but they're also a person. And first, to clarify, you think it's okay for some humans to be the victims of homicide? Do you think it's okay to commit homicide against a human, just not a person?
I mean, I would take issue with homicide because that's a really loaded term. But I would say that you can end the life of human beings that no longer have the capacity to deploy consciousness. And
So
we
if
do
I'm
that.
asleep
Let me
and I'm
finish real quick.
unconscious, it's okay to kill me?
That's why I said capacity to deploy consciousness. I can wake you up when you're sleeping.
Like the fetus
Okay.
has capacity.
No, a fetus that doesn't have the necessary brain parts has
Destiny,
no capacity for consciousness.
If you give that child time, that child
Give the
innately
child time
has
implies-
capacity.
Wait, you said 20 to 24 weeks. What about children?
Hold on.
Who
Wait.
have REM
Just you
cycle
saying,
sleep
hold on.
at
Wait.
18 weeks.
Wait. Just what you said there. Give the child time implies that it's
Give
not
me time
there
to
yet.
wake up.
Do you think that a seed and a tree are the same thing?
You're making a wrong equivalency.
I'm
here.
not making a wrong
No,
equivalency.
you are,
I'm saying that a
Destiny.
seed
Because
given enough
listen,
time, a seed given enough
Destiny.
time will grow into a tree. But when you use the word, this thing will become this thing. The implication there is your intuition pumping all the rights that this thing has for saying this will become
Incorrect.
this.
Incorrect. A child in the womb, a human being, has
Yeah.
the capacity for consciousness.
No, it
They
doesn't.
might not have developed that capacity.
That means they don't
yet.
have the capacity
They might not
for
have
it.
developed that
one,
capacity yet.
just one microphone at a time, please. Just let
Okay,
everyone
sorry,
finish.
they
Go
might
ahead.
not have
Absolutely
developed the
do.
capacity yet. Similarly, if someone is in a coma or unconscious, that capacity is not activated yet. But if you don't interrupt the life of that child, if you don't
right.
kill that child will absolutely be conscious in just develop consciousness in just a few weeks.
And that's the difference between the
So-
question you were asking me earlier when you tried to trip me up about the
I'm
end
not trying
of
to.
life.
You guys are the ones trying to trip me up.
No,
I'm trying to
we're
take out
trying to
what you're.
clarify. You have a very murky position because you said between 20 to 24 weeks, I believe a child has rights. Which one is it if you're the one making the laws?
Sure,
And who
I
gives
have
you
a
the right to make those
crystal
laws?
clear position. My position is the thing we ought to defend is the conscious experience because that's the thing we look
When
to.
does that conscious experience begin?
About
here?
20 to 24 weeks.
You don't
Well,
have
that's
any-
a big time period because there's been children who've been born at 21 weeks and 5 days. So were those children, when they were born prematurely, so I had an intern a few years ago who was one of the youngest children ever to survive.
Okay.
At that age, she was 21 weeks and 6 days old.
Okay.
So she's right in between your 20 to 24 week time range.
Okay.
So when she and her twin sister were born, do you believe that the hospital, the NICU, did something wrong and giving out care and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in care to sustain her and her sister's life?
Why would I think something wrong was done there?
Well, because
you don't think it's a human with consciousness necessarily.
Yeah,
So
you're
I
you're
don't
not
think
sure.
a
Your argument's
2-week-old
trying
is
to
a
kill
human
them.
with consciousness, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with supporting it.
But you're saying it's okay to kill it.
So you're saying my
Kill him
vagina
or
is
her.
magical. So something happens.
No, first of all, as a
and-
child born by C-section, I'm very offended. Okay,
But
we're
I mean,
humans too.
that's a
Number one,
position you're
no,
taking.
hold on.
Is it
hold on.
something-
Wait,
something magical
hold on.
happens during birth?
The vagina magic guy is not in the room right now. I
Well,
didn't
you
give any
were
qualification
talking about
about birth being the magical time that made somebody a human. I've never said that ever, so I have no idea what position you're attacking there. To back up, very
I'm attacking
clearly,
your position that's not clear because
My
you said
position is-
20 to
let me say-
24 weeks, and I'm asking you a very direct question
Yeah.
about child born at 21
Your question was
weeks
if a child
and
is
6
prematurely born
days.
at 16 weeks, the mother and the father have every right to try to find support for that child. Why would you not?
But why? What makes that
Why?
child
Because it's going to grow into
worthy
their kid. Why would they
of
not?
care?
But you're saying it's okay to kill the kid at 16 weeks.
Sure.
And I think that's the difference between this side of the table and that side of the table.
Well,
That side of the
obviously,
table is
that's because
okay.
I'm pro-choice and you guys are
right, but you're pro, as you
pro-abortion
said,
and you're
pro-abortion.
anti-abortion.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered that you could be wrong on this issue?
Yeah, of course. Have you?
Absolutely.
Hold on. Only one, to be clear, only one
Absolutely.
side of the table here is tied to organizations that are getting money invested in them. So
Well,
if any side here was
I
gonna,
started my
I
organization.
understand, but
so-
you're never changing your position. I'm still free to change mine. So in terms of
Yeah.
asking me if I consider
That's why
I'm
I'm
wrong,
asking
I
you.
can consider that I'm wrong. You guys will never change your opinion on this. But go ahead.
I've considered it. I've had
Okay.
to consider a lot of
Sure.
terms. But what would it mean if you were wrong on your position on abortion?
What would
Morally,
it mean if
what
I
would it
was
mean?
wrong?
So I don't know if you believe in God or heaven or whatever.
Well, I haven't aborted any kids yet,
But
so
say
to my
you
knowledge.
say you get hit by a bus
Uh-huh.
and you go to heaven, and God's like, Destiny, you've been completely wrong on abortion your entire life. You've advocated for abortions between 20 and 24 weeks. No one can really tell because you wouldn't give us a definitive time.
Hold on, you're
Like,
hold on, wait,
can
wait,
you
I'm sorry, I gotta address this real quick.
consider,
I
like,
gotta,
what would that
wait,
mean
I gotta,
if you were wrong on
okay,
abortion?
hold on. For you saying that just because I can't nail an exact solid time when
That's kind of a big deal.
It's not really that big of a
It
deal.
is a big deal.
It's a
'cause
big deal when
There's
you're
a
making
line
laws.
between,
It's
there's
super
a line
not a big
between
deal.
homicide
You could
and
literally
then it
just
being
say
totally
like,
okay.
hey, before 20 weeks, abortion is okay, and then draw the cutoff right there if you want. That's a question for policymakers.
But why do policymakers? Why does anyone get to
Why do a
decide
bunch of
whether or
men
not
get to
an
decide
innocent person lives or dies?
Because that's what policymakers do.
No, they don't have the right to kill an innocent person. If any policymaker tries
if
to
you're
kill an
making
innocent person,
decisions about
that's
healthcare
murder.
and triage and who
There's
gets
a-
medical treatment first, or if you're making decisions about
Destiny,
saving
can't
people
you
from
admit there's a- okay,
hold on,
can't-
wait, okay.
I still
I'm gonna
wanna
wait, just be clear. I'm gonna
I
start
still
cutting
need
people.
to know if you've ever
I
considered
know, but I don't have a
that.
chance to answer any question, and you're like loading so many horribly like intuition pump question banks in front of me that I don't have time to answer all of the horrible questions in front of me. Okay,
I
so
just
like,
wanna-
no, I'm gonna keep
considered
talking.
wrong.
We're gonna do one at a time. I will answer a question, but you can't keep stacking like dumb questions in front of me, and they'll be like, oh, see, like you want to murder children, okay?
I don't
If
know
you
about
wanna-
dumb-
if you
they
want me
weren't
to
dumb
answer, hold on.
questions.
So let me address the very first thing because you keep trying to draw like there's some like thing here that you've caught me on. The idea that I can't give you a concrete time between 20 to 24 weeks. Okay?
Yeah.
I hate to be the guy that does this in a debate, but there's something called a continuum fallacy or a nirvana fallacy. The idea that just because I can't point exactly at when something begins, that I have to say that all of it is the same or I can't point to that thing existing at all. I can't tell you when individual pieces of sand are stacked up and eventually become a pile of sand. I can't give you the exact numbers of sand that I can see for that to be, but there is a difference between an individual piece of sand and a pile
It's
of
a
sand.
false equivalency, Destiny. It is.
Hold on.
It
it's,
is.
It's hold on.
That's-
This is basic
gonna-
argumentation.
Because the reality is you are saying that these are persons
Yep.
and
Yeah.
these aren't based on a specific characteristic that you've decided on. You came up with it. It's not human rights
I
anymore.
didn't-
It's consciousness rights.
Yes.
You believe
because
in not
that,
human
no.
rights.
To be
You're
clear,
not, you're not in support of
nobody
human
here
rights.
at this table,
You're in
you
support
either
of consciousness
hold
right
on.
now.
Why don't you defend?
So
wait,
you need
why
to
don't?
defend your position, and you're not doing that. You're kind of
Yeah.
blowing
told
smoke a little
you.
bit, to be honest.
Why don't
And
you
so
give the same rights to
let's-
why don't you give the same
let's-
rights to human corpses as you do to living
Because they're
humans?
dead. They
Okay,
can't,
what
they're already
does that
dead.
mean when you say they're dead?
So they're already dead.
What does dead mean to you?
I mean,
their
there's-
body's no
there's-
longer working in a coordinated fashion anymore. Their heart isn't pumping blood. Their
Okay.
brain is not.
If I put a
producing brain waves.
on a table and I can keep them alive with machines indefinitely, but they're never going to wake up, is that a human
So
life that
there's
should
a-
be
there-
defended?
there is a difference between withholding extraordinary
Just to be
medical
clear, I'm about
care-
to ask that same question after you, whatever you're about to say, because you're
No,
not
this
answering
is
my
important
question.
because
Okay, go ahead.
it's a bit of obfuscation the direction you're going
It's
here, because
absolutely
there's a
not.
difference between withholding extraordinary medical care,
Mm-hmm.
which would be like life support, and withholding ordinary medical care. So if I, as a parent, or I as a doctor, I have a patient in the hospital, and let's say they are there being monitored because they have a cancer, aggressive cancer, but they're maybe going to die, but they're not dead yet, and they're not on life support, they're just being monitored. And if I withheld food from this cancer patient and refused to bring food and this cancer patient can eat and refuse to feed that cancer patient, that would be homicide against that cancer patient. I don't have the right to.
You agree with that, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a good
Do
question.
you
but I
agree
with
that would be homicide?
Would it be wrong to deprive
I'll say it's
food to a
wrong,
cancer
for sure,
patient?
yeah.
Who's going to die?
Well, legally, it would be murder to not feed
Whether
a
I'm not
patient
going to make
in
a
the
legal
hospital.
argument, but yeah, I would agree that would be wrong.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
So that's the difference between extraordinary medical measures and ordinary measures, okay? And for
Natural
a child
progression
versus
versus
in the
end.
womb, they deserve the ordinary measure of being able to stay in their natural habitat, their mother's womb, until they're old enough to survive outside the womb. Similarly, a newborn who you're feeding formula or you're breastfeeding has a right to that food from their mother or caretaker until they're old enough to, and even when they're old enough to physically feed themselves, they still have a right to be given a plate full of food at the dinner table. You can actually go to jail for child neglect by failing to feed your child. So, building these analogies that actually don't work with what we're actually talking about by saying, well, removing life support is like abortion. They're not the same, because children have a right to care, and children have a right to food, and children have a right to nourishment.
I still think
just like a right
you
to
need
life.
to clarify your position, because you said 20 to 24 weeks, which I gave you a very, very real life scenario of a child who was born, a twin who was born at 21 weeks and 6 days, which in your view could have been aborted because you don't think she would have had the consciousness that you deem worthy of personhood.
True.
But I mean, what biologist do you know that tells you that consciousness is at 24 weeks?
It's a great question.
Because I researched this before. I was on the internet. I was looking at PubMed at NIH's website. There aren't biological conclusions. And in fact, they actually support the pro-life side, because you look at the pro-life.
Biologists don't make an argument about pro-life or pro-abortion.
Well, they do make arguments about when child feel pain, when twins interact. So there's a very well-known study showing that twins interact in the womb as early as 14
Amoeba
weeks.
interact with each other.
Pain, children can experience pain at 12 and a half
Germs
weeks.
react to external
So
stimuli.
are you saying
plants
Are you
and
saying
things.
germs are the same as human lives?
I haven't even got to. Okay, so let me make a couple things. So first of all, you said I made a false analogy earlier. You've compared abortion to cancer patients getting withheld
No,
food.
I wasn't comparing abortion to cancer patients.
Okay,
I was talking about the difference between ordinary measures.
I'm not talking about
and
ordinary or
measures
extraordinary
when
care.
it comes to
That
medical
is
care.
that is an entirely
progression
separate.
versus natural
That is an
end. That's what they're trying
entirely.
to
That's
conflate.
great. That's entirely great.
If I can just jump in really
No,
quick.
I don't need you to jump in.
If I
No.
could just jump in.
No,
really
listen.
quick. Hold on, wait. Let me just say, if we can allow maybe turn the heat down a little bit on the conversation, or at least slow it down a little bit.
We're making people at home uncomfortable.
Well, I do want to give. It does seem to be that Destiny hasn't had as
No,
much
that's fine.
opportunity.
I'm good. I'm taking notes.
You okay?
I'm good. I'm ready.
We needed that other guest there.
No,
Right?
we absolutely don't. Let me go. Okay. You're making bad analogies by comparing any of this to ordinary or extraordinary medical care is a fundamentally separate question, okay? That's a separate question of provisioning resources, whatever.
completely agree.
You don't agree because you brought it up as a contrary to
No,
the
I was
question that
bringing
I
it up as a
said.
response
I would
to you
originally
about-
ask you this question again, and I'm going to ask you the question again because nothing that you said addressed it. And my question was, and I'm going to repeat it, a person that is in a coma that will never wake up, should that person be indefinitely kept alive on life machines?
It depends on what are the characteristics of them in that.
The
coma.
characteristic is
Was
that the
a
person's
medically
body.
induced coma?
The characteristic is the person is in a coma. They're never going to wake up, but their body is still.
How do you know they're not going to
How
wake
do
up?
you know they're never going to wake up?
The problem is,
Because
Destiny, you're
the
coming up
scientist has
you're
a magic machine that he pushes a button, and the machine says this person is never going to wake
You're coming
up.
up with a magical scenario that you are designing without providing any context. Where
Just to be
context
clear, are you
exists in
telling
the
me that a
real
person
world.
being in a coma is not going to wake up is a magical scenario?
No, I'm telling you that when
Okay, so
people
we agree
are
that
in a
people
coma,
are in
you're
comas,
trying
and
to make it
oftentimes we can say.
absolute.
Guys,
You're
please,
trying
one
to make-
microphone at a time, please.
Because the refusal to engage with the
Let me
question
answer.
demonstrates the weakness of your position.
No.
You can keep doing this, but I'm
Destiny.
to be clear, I'm going to ask the same question again.
I still like
If you
to get
can't
my
even
question
engage-
answered.
Wait, guys,
you can't even
please,
engage with
just
the
no
hypothetical. There's a
interrupting.
reason
Listening
why.
to what I'm saying.
I am listening, but you're not.
Okay.
You're refusing to engage with the hypothetical
No.
because you know that you don't have a rock solid
No,
definition of
because
what type of life
you're-
should be defended. The
because
reason why
we
you want to
did-
engage with the
guys,
question is
hold on.
You're making a lot of assumptions.
Order in the podcast studio. I am noticing perhaps on I don't know which side is doing it most, but let's try to avoid interrupting. Let's allow people to speak, finish their thought, and then if we can. So Destiny, do you want to
do
make
a round table? One question, we each answer.
Okay, to be clear, I'm willing to, and I have responded to, when you asked me about feeding cancer patients, what I said at killing, I said yes. You said when you withhold food from a child, I said, I'll answer any question you give me. I have no problem.
Answer
It's
the
my position.
question, have you ever considered that you may be wrong on this issue? And if you are wrong on this issue, what does it mean you are spending your time advocating for?
There's problems on both sides. First of all, that's not the greatest question to ask. You're getting into very weird, like Pascal's
thank
way.
you for
I'm
your
going to finish
passive
answering the question,
misogyny.
okay? So
just answer the question.
I am answering the question, okay?
After you insulted me.
What do you mean? How have I insulted you?
Insulted me.
Wait, how did I insult you?
My question. You said, well, it's not the greatest question to ask.
I said it's not a good question to ask because theoretically you run into a bunch of weirdos saying, well, what
Maybe
if I'm
you don't
wrong on
wanna
this particular
answer the
thing?
question.
What
Have
if
you
you're
thought
wrong
about
by
that?
saying that black people and white people do deserve the same rights?
Well, let's let Destiny answer the question.
Yeah, so
Go
I mean,
ahead.
so I'm not going to always think of like, well, what if I'm wrong? I mean, I do consider both ends of things, but the consequences for being wrong on both ends are pretty disastrous. On one end, you're advocating for, I guess, arguably the genocide of of little babies,
That
and on
seems
the
pretty
other
awful.
end, and on the other end, you're advocating forcing women to give birth to children that they might not want, especially in cases of, say, sexual assault or in cases where they feel like they can't support for the child.
What do you think
birth,
what do you think
abortion?
would be worse? Genocide? So we had 60-some million abortions in America since Roe versus Wade. 60 million. More than 1,000 children are killed every day at Planned Parenthood.
You can't. You keep saying children like you're
Yes,
morally
they are.
loading your
Children.
They're young
Yes.
humans.
Okay.
When you saw the
abortions.
ultrasound of your son in the womb, did you say, "Wow, look at that fetus sucking its thumb," or did you say, "Wow, look at my boy, he smiled at me"?
Yeah, I also get warm feelings when I look at my car. Like, this isn't proving an argument
Are you
by
saying
saying
cars
like,
are the same as humans?
I'm not saying cars. I'm saying that judging the validity or the veracity of your argument by the emotional response somebody has to an ultrasound. I also felt a certain type of way when my ex-girlfriend showed me that she was pregnant. But that doesn't mean that the urine on the strip is anything special either, right?
Your emotions can match
Just
the
to be
reality.
clear, I still
and
haven't
the
gotten an answer to my coma question, which is like
I still
fundamentally
haven't
like an
gotten an answer
important.
to my question.
the reality.
What was your question?
So, do you consider you're wrong? And you said,
I
well,
have
on
considered
one,
I'm wrong, but the
on
problem
one
is,
end
hold
it'd
on,
be
let me- yeah, hold on,
genocide.
just let her finish.
On
Yeah,
one
she's
end it
gonna
would
say the
be
same thing, yeah.
genocide, and on the other extreme, if I were wrong, I would have forced women to carry unwanted children, or in your word, fetuses or things.
Correct.
What do you think would be worse?
Well, in order to answer
Genocide
that,
of hundreds of millions of
innocent
children
babies, yeah.
worldwide. Do you think that would be a little worse?
The thing is,
than
in order
inconveniencing a woman for 9 months if I were wrong?
in order to accurately answer the question, you have to assess the risk of being wrong on both ends. For instance, if I were to say, what would be worse if I've got to choose between 50 people here or 100 people here to protect from some death event, you know, what should I choose? The 50 people or the 100 people? Well, it doesn't make sense unless I have a...
What do you mean by death event?
As in, let's say that there's going to be something that has a chance of coming in and killing both people, but I can protect one group of people. Do I want to protect the 50 or the 100?
But that's not
I need to finish the analogy. Hold on. If you can't understand any hypothetical, we can't get anywhere in this conversation.
But these hypotheticals don't match what we're discussing.
The hypothetical perfectly maps on. What I'm saying is I wouldn't just say that I would protect the 100 people because 100 is greater than 50. What I would say is, what is the probability of the 100 people dying versus what is the probability of the 50 people dying? And then from there, you would start to weight the decision accurately.
So hundreds of millions of women haven't died.
When you ask me, what's the probability or what is the likelihood of being wrong, or what would be worse, being wrong here or being wrong here? What I have to think of is, what is the probability of being wrong on both ends? It's not just a 1-to-1, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything is a 1-to-1, like there's an equal chance of being right or wrong here. I feel very strongly about my position about being pro-choice, so I'm not weighting this as a 50% chance of being right here and a 50% chance of being right here. So the question doesn't make sense. What I'm saying is a meaningless question.
How do you feel very strongly about being pro-choice when you can't even tell us at what point you think a child has this extra special consciousness that deserves the right to life in the womb?
Why would that prohibit me from...
You don't know when consciousness exists, when it actually comes... You don't know when the baby has consciousness.
I've given you the range of when different people develop at different rates. It's about 20 to 24 weeks.
So you want to create, so you believe that we should have a sliding scale of what it means to be a human person.
We already have that sliding scale. We do it at death. That's why when we go back to the... I'm going to ask again... No, I'm not answering the question until you answer this question.
Do you think it's okay to kill someone when they're unconscious?
No, because I said capacity to deploy consciousness.
What do you mean by capacity to deploy consciousness?
As in all of the parts in your brain are functioning and working and can deploy a conscious experience.
So an embryo who is developing their brain will absolutely have the capacity to deploy.
Will implies
but
doesn't
why
yet.
are you being age discriminatory against that
because
child
when
for
you
not
say,
having fully developed?
No, hold on, wait, you can't just ramble and ask me a question. You ask me a question. If you're going to ask me, I'm just going to keep talking. Okay. When you ask me, will a thing have a right, I will agree with you that it will. The pieces for a building are not the same thing as a building itself. A seed is not the same thing as a tree. An embryo is not the same thing as a person.
No, you're
so when you say, hold on, don't
wholes.
stop saying that every single... Okay, hold on.
The
to be clear for the
embryo is
audience,
whole.
when you're having a conversation with somebody, if you're having a
finish.
conversation with me and they're not willing to engage with a single hypothetical, or they claim every hypothetical doesn't map on, unless you can clearly explain why, it's because you know that the hypothetical is testing the limits of your belief in a way that demonstrates the absurdity of what you're saying.
And you don't want to acknowledge that.
Whether or not pro or anti-life
finish
exists
and then
has
we
nothing to do with science. It's not a scientific question. It's a question of moral philosophy. Okay? Number one. So number two, going all the way back to this original question that I don't think you're going to answer me, because I think that this does demonstrate the faultiness of your position.
I already answered you, and you
didn't answer. No, you said that's an absurd proposition to imagine a person could be in a coma.
I said you needed to provide more information. Was it a medically induced coma? How long was the coma? These questions matter, and they're actually...
Destiny, what is the question?
I can ask a very simple question.
Was there injuries?
A person is in a bed. This person is unconscious in a coma. The doctor has a machine and he pushes the button and the machine says this person will never wake up again. But the rest of their body works.
There's no button like that exists.
That's why it's called a hypothetical.
Then it's
hypothetical
a false
means
hypothetical, Destiny, because it doesn't exist in the real world. You're inventing a false hypothetical that doesn't exist in the real world.
That is in human life dying.
Yeah, so and you're using it to justify ending the life of an embryo.
You can't adjust this.
Or a human being.
I wouldn't debate de facto.
If
you're incapable of dealing with a hypothetical, then the conversation is like...
we can deal with hypotheticals.
You can't. A hypothetical, by definition, is
No.
something that is not happening. That's why it's called a
Destiny.
hypothetical.
Destiny.
So wait. Let me ask you a hypothetical.
Yeah, what?
Since you love hypotheticals, let me ask you.
I
a
love
hypothetical.
hypotheticals.
So
Yes.
That's great.
scientists are working on artificial wombs.
Okay.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with me that if they develop this artificial womb that can sustain human life, that there would be no legal reason, or there should be no legal justification for abortion? Because if you could remove a child from a woman's womb who says doesn't want to have a child, didn't want to get pregnant, and place that child in an artificial womb where the child will safely grow and develop until he or she's ready to be born, would you agree with me then, in that hypothetical situation, that there's no justification for abortion?
No.
Why not?
You're not even. There's 10 unanswered questions back and forth.
I just solved all the problems, right? With my hypotheticals.
You are making a dialogue tree argument against an argument for viability. I have never made that argument in my life. I've never argued that viability is what determines if a child gets to live or die. That's an absurd position. I would never have that. So if you're saying
you were making a viability
hold on.
argument.
What? Wait, no, wait, because you don't even understand the arguments you're making now. Hold on. You are making an argument for viability when you're saying, if I could show you an artificial womb,
I love when men
should we
yell at
not
me.
say? Yeah, I know, I love yelling at women. Okay, could you not say?
I can tell.
Could you not say? Thank you. Could you not say that, like, well, if I can show you that I can transplant this fetus from this womb at 1 week to an artificial womb, doesn't that give it the right to life? The implication there being the viability of a fetus to survive outside of a natural womb.
I thought we could find common ground on that.
Hold on. So
Yeah, the common ground. I would
That's
say
why
if
I
that
was
has no,
asking,
there is no
Destiny.
common ground there. I would say 20 to 24 weeks.
So
The same answer I gave before.
Your entire position is based on is based on age. It's basically the development, the
It's
maturity.
not based on age. It's based on development of the consciousness.
Development is age, Destiny.
It could develop
For
early
human-
or later, I guess, right?
A development is age. Age is a marker of development.
It
okay?
can be, sure.
So your whole argument is that if the development hasn't happened yet, then therefore they're not a human life worthy of protection.
And a person, yeah.
A person,
Yes.
okay? So are you saying that toddlers, because they're less developed than an adolescent, should have should not have the same rights as an adolescent?
Yes. You agree with the same
Fundamental
thing.
human
Hold on,
rights.
to be
They should
clear.
have different human
Whoa,
rights because
okay,
of
now you're qualifying
development.
more, but the funny thing
Because
is
of
you
human
said
rights.
in your opening statement, you literally said
They have the
children
same
need
human
even
rights,
more
right?
protection. They don't have the same rights.
Do they
A child
set-
can't sign a contract. A child can't
But-
buy a
but
house. A
Destiny,
2-year-old
hold
can't go
for
to high
1 second.
school.
Do they have the same human rights?
What? No.
A toddler and an
They don't have the same
adolescent
human rights.
don't have the
Do you-
same
what,
human rights.
Do you believe? That
I would
there are
argue
human
that I
rights?
have like the human right to live in a house in the way that I want to. A 3-year-old
Okay,
does not have the
so
human
do you
right
not
to live.
agree
Hold on.
Okay,
no,
hold on. Do you not agree there are
wait.
fundamental human rights? Maybe that's
There might be some.
Connection.
If you want to get very fundamental in terms of like, do you have a right to not be killed?
Yes.
Then
Yes,
sure.
yes. I think that's
hold
a
on.
very important
Sure,
point
you
to-
can say
to
that.
establish,
But earlier
for
you
sure.
stumbled onto something very funny that we all agree on: is that based on
No.
the level of development, you actually do grant different rights to people.
Well,
that is absolutely
so
true.
you're saying if you're not developed enough, you have the right to be. You actually, instead of being more protected as a child, you should be less protected as a child, and you have less rights as a child to not be killed, to not
a
be fed, to not be
child
cared
is
for.
generally defined as a human person, so
But-
you're begging the
but
question when you
Destiny
ask.
believes
I
in
believe
the-
all children should
he
have rights.
believes in
I
the
just don't agree that a
magical-
3-week-old
Are you still
fetus is a
believing
child.
in the magical vagina or
More than I
magical
believe in the
C-section?
magical zygote that
Because
becomes a
what
magical
about- so
human
what
when it's
about
2
the-
cells big.
What
Yeah, of
about
course.
the intern I mentioned, the 21-week, 6-day intern?
What about it?
So when she was born, she and her twin sister were born. Now that's in
Okay.
your 24 weeks. Who knows what Destiny really believes about abortion at that point?
I told you between 20 and 24 weeks, yeah.
You got to be kind of specific when you're talking
Do you
about
think that
killing
puberty
people.
exists?
But
Wait. Do you think puberty? Wait. I need to know. Do you think puberty?
answer my question,
Okay.
Destiny. Remember?
I'm going to ask you this again. I'm
Yes,
coming
I
back to the
believe in
coma one too,
biology.
because you
We
still
can
haven't
come
answered
back to the coma all day long.
You still haven't answered the coma
But
question. But
it's a false.
But what is the answer? So
The
at
answer is if you want to take care of a baby.
Excuse me.
You're
At-
excused. Go ahead.
At 21 weeks and 6 days,
Yeah.
a child is born,
Uh-huh.
and a child is surviving.
A thing
But
is, yeah, okay.
Is it a thing or is it a child?
Something, yeah, it must be something.
Do I have the right after the moments that child comes out?
Right to kill it, actually.
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out.
Yeah.
Moments after that child
Uh-huh.
exits my body via C-section or vaginal birth,
Okay.
does that child have the right to not be killed? Because that child is in that 24 weeks, and we don't know,
If the child has
according
your
to
level
your
of consciousness.
science, we don't know what type of consciousness this child has. So is there anything wrong with saying, well, you survived, we're not going to treat you, we're going to actually actively dismember you or
So,
inject a poison to your heart
if
to
you're
cause a heart
approaching
attack.
my position in good faith, if I'm saying that consciousness develops around 20 to 24 weeks,
But how
then
do you
would
know?
probably draw, because that's when scientists
But
seem to think that.
how
oh,
do
I'm
you
sorry.
know
I
that the
I'm so sorry.
child-
I was interrupting your question with my answer.
How do you
my
know
bad.
the
You were gonna ask
child
another
at
question.
21 weeks and 6 days has consciousness? How do you know? What's changed?
You don't know.
So that's what I'm saying.
No, that's what I was saying. I was going to answer, but you cut me off. You cut my answer to your
So I
question off with
wanna
another
know, is
question.
it
So
okay
you
to
don't want to
kill
know.
a
You're just trying to run
child
me down a dialogue. here.
after the child
is
is
it okay
born?
to kill a child? Probably not.
Is it
I would imagine
okay-
it's probably never okay to kill a child, right? So my answer was that if the cutoff seems to be somewhere around 20 to 24 weeks, if you're drawing policy or legislation because we can't determine exactly when they're conscious, you'd probably be safe and say something like only first trimester abortion would probably be like a thing, or like before like the 20-week mark would probably be about where you'd go to. That'd be my guess.
Okay, but so the child who's born at 21 weeks and 6 days, or the fetus, or whatever.
That would be past the policy cutoff. So you'd probably say at that point it should probably
this
be.
is Destiny's hypothetical world. This is Destiny's hypothetical world. If you're there at the delivery room, are you saying that child can be killed because we don't know what that child's conscious
In Destiny's
level is?
hypothetical world, if
Is
we've
it-
drawn the line at
would you do
20
anything
weeks,
wrong?
if the child is born at 21 weeks, we'd probably say, okay, well, now that it's
So
born,
now
it's
you've
going to be
changed your
treated.
position in this debate. You went from 20 to 24 weeks, and now you're down to 20, right?
Do you understand the difference between a policy position versus like an epistemic statement or like a moral statement?
Yes,
on
I'm
what
not.
might be?
I'm not a moron. Thank you.
Okay.
I
well,
love how
then
you word
I don't.
these
well,
questions. Like,
I don't know
do
why
you understand there's a difference between the color blue and the color purple?
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never talked to a misogynistic man like this before.
Okay. All right.
I still want to know if you think that
You
there's
don't want to know
something
anything. I didn't
happens-
answer a question.
Something
I said in the very
magical
beginning of
happens
this.
at birth.
Yeah, I said in the very beginning of this that the cutoff would be 20 to 24 weeks.
And now
right?
you're down to 20. So we've actually we're winning. He's down to 20 now.
Well, wait, hold on.
Said 20.
So wait, just a question.
Yeah.
She's just accused you of being misogynistic. I mean, do you have a response to that?
I am.
I don't think he has one.
Well, no.
He'd say
I
he
mean,
is.
come on, be.
I'm being honest.
You're not a
I am.
misogynist, Destiny.
I hate women. The more time I spend around them, the more contemptuous I feel about them.
Well, I mean,
Every
you're
avenue of
trolling,
life.
but
I've watched so many Just Pearly Things videos. I just
can
can't
we go
even.
back to the consciousness stuff with
Sure.
the,
Well,
with
can
the
I even?
toddler
Apparently, my
versus
position
that?
doesn't even exist right now. So let me restate.
No,
I've tried to.
your position's good now. We know where you're at least at. You're at 20 weeks. We've got you moved from 24 to 20 weeks,
Yeah,
right?
so the question of policy is separate from the factual question of when does a conscious experience happen, right? What I stated initially was, it seems like there's a conscious experience that starts at around 20 to 24 weeks.
Can you name the biologist?
I Google it.
That's what I told you. I actually researched this for several hours today on NIH's PubMed website, and I actually found a lot of pro-choice scientists who are saying children can feel pain at 12 and a half
Feeling
weeks.
pain Or they is don't not know. Consciousness.
Or they don't
Siblings
know.
can interact with each other at 14 weeks. So just using that data from the NIH's own website would tell you that now your 20-week limit on abortions, which is wrong and probably should be moved
Okay,
down
so
to
I
12
Googled
to
this,
14
and the first
weeks.
thing that came up from scientificamerican.com, I'm not sure what research that is, consciousness requires a sophisticated network of highly interconnected components, nerve cells, its physical substrate, the thalamocortical complex that provides consciousness with its highly elaborate content, begins to be in place between the 24th and 28th week of gestation. Now, I Googled that, was the first thing that came up, so it's crazy to me that you read all these things. But however, I will finish, 24th to 28th, I've also seen stuff that says 20th to 24th week. So because I
And
don't want to
REM
murder baby, to
sleep
be
starts at
safe,
18
to be
weeks.
safe, I would probably say I would go with the earlier number because I generally don't want to kill children most of the time. So I would say that the policy position should probably say that on the 20th week, that should probably be the cutoff where we start treating it as a child, and then you give it all the same protections and rights that you would a third trimester pregnancy or a born child. So that's about what it said. No position has changed. I haven't moved at all. At the very beginning of this debate, I said 20 to 24 weeks is about. I haven't even clarified. That was the policy position would probably just stop at 20 weeks.
I have a question for Destiny. Do you believe in human rights?
What do you mean by that?
Do you believe in universal, fundamental human rights that all human beings share?
Yes, I do believe there are some universal rights people should have.
Good.
Do they
Does that
objectively
include the
exist?
right to life? Does that include the right to not be killed?
Generally speaking, I would say so. Yeah.
Generally speaking, or yes?
That's a very difficult question. If two countries are at war with each other, does somebody have a right to kill an enemy combatant?
You can't answer this question.
Does somebody have a right to kill an enemy combatant in a war?
Yeah. So in a war,
I'm asking. Okay, yeah,
in
that's
a war,
what I'm saying.
there can be something called just war theory. There's different theories for what makes a war just or unjust.
Okay.
And yes, you can be tried for war crimes for unjustly killing a civilian.
Okay. I'm just trying to make you understand
because they have a right to life as a human being.
I'm just trying to make you understand that when you ask me a question of like, does everybody have a fundamental right to life? Depending on what you're asking, that could be a very difficult question.
I'll say it again and let me know if this is clear. Do you as a human being have a right to not be killed?
I would say, generally speaking,
without due process. How about we'll add that?
Generally speaking, if we have any sort of construction of government, my imagination would be that a fundamental right would be a right to life, to not be killed. Yes, I would agree with that. In any given country,
in the United States, under the U.S. Constitution, the 14th Amendment says that we have a right to equal protection under the law, and no state has a right to deprive the life of anyone without due process. You've probably heard this before. Okay, so do you think that there is any due process for the human life? Right now, where is the due process for the human life before your consciousness arbitrary
Well, I would say that person isn't protected by the Constitution because they're not a person yet.
Okay, and you're defining personhood based on
somebody
this
that
20
has
to 24
capability
week,
of having a conscious experience, yes.
So let's talk about that for a minute. If I'm under anesthetic and I'm unconscious, and someone comes up to me and says, "Can I kill you?" and I'm unconscious, I can't say, "Don't kill me." Can they kill me?
No.
Tell me why.
Because you have the capacity to deploy a conscious experience.
Just like the fetus.
No, the fetus can't.
The fetus.
Destiny, if you don't kill that fetus, the fetus with a matter of time, because I'm under anesthetic, in a matter of time, I will come out from under anesthetic and I will have my consciousness. For the fetus, if you don't kill that fetus under a matter of time, the natural human development, you were once a tiny child in the womb, maybe 18 weeks before the consciousness that you say some biologists claim for.
Half of me was an egg,
and if no one killed you, then you would have your consciousness, just like I, coming out of an anesthetic, would have my consciousness.
Do you think
So your position sounds like age discrimination, because you're saying that because the child doesn't have their consciousness yet, just like under anesthetic, I don't have my consciousness regained yet.
Do you think there are any 2-year-old humans? Do you think there are any 200-year-old?
Then you're saying that it's okay to kill them.
Do you think there are any 200-year-old humans that deserve to be protected by all the human rights that we have fundamentally?
Well, I think if someone lived to be 200, then yeah, they'd be
pretty awesome.
What about right now? Are you ageist?
Who's actually alive?
What do you mean, am I ageist? If there was a 200-year-old, I'd say yes. If they're alive, that would be amazing.
Okay, and if there was a 1-week-old having a conscious experience, I would say it as well.
But if the 200-year-old is asleep and unconscious, I still don't have the right to kill them, Destiny.
Because if they're asleep, they can wake up.
Your line of consciousness, your reasoning about consciousness
is
not logical.
You just stated the fundamental flaw of your entire position, because you keep saying,
I understand.
If they wake up,
I'm just going to talk now, okay? The way that this conversation works is because you two have organizations, because you two are bought in. You can never even remotely consider. I have to, because I haven't gotten the ability to even respond to
misogynist. Come on.
It's not misogynist, okay? Now I'm in my demon racial
energy
because you're both white people. So now I'm like hitting you because you're white, okay?
But you can't just throw that zinger in there like, oh, you're only pro-life
because you
because
the style of argumentation that you're both engaging in is like a Gish Gallop of 50 million questions. Nothing is scientific about this conversation. It's 50 million questions about me being able to respond to or answer anything.
Well, let's have a scientific.
What is not scientific about the argument?
I've got a question.
This is a question of philosophy. It's not a scientific argument.
Got a question here.
None of my questions have been answered yet. Yeah, go ahead.
So we can go back to your hypothetical, but if you don't answer my clarifying question,
so Lila, I have a question for you, Lila.
We're not going to get very far.
I got a question for you, Lila.
Yes.
For everybody here at the table. Wow, it's very heated. Okay. When does life begin?
At the moment of conception, when
the
sperm
moment of fertilization
and egg unite, when a unique, whole, living human being that never existed before and will never exist again comes into existence with a unique genetic code. And 96%,
wait, so are twins not human?
Excuse me.
Hold on, just
96% of biologists in the University of Chicago study, majority of whom were pro-choice and liberal, confirm that fact, that there is no other point at your development can you say you became you than at the moment of conception when your DNA, your genetic code came into existence. That is a biological fact. And I'm sorry it's inconvenient to raise that, but that is the fact.
And to clarify, I would agree with you, Destiny. If human life began at consciousness, I would say you know, anything before that, human life beginning at consciousness, I would say it doesn't matter. It's not a human life yet. But what's inconvenient for you is that human life doesn't begin at consciousness. Yeah. Human life and
First
humans.
of all, none of this is inconvenient for me. I'm not a woman. At the end of the day, I'm not going to have a kid, so it's not inconvenient for me at all. Okay?
Wait, so Destiny,
I didn't give birth to him.
But he's your
when does life
I'm just saying, you're saying it's
child.
inconvenient to me, where it's like it's not
well,
an inconvenience to me to
I
recognize.
think you're representing the pro-abortion position here, and
Surely
you're
you don't
saying
believe in
that
no
consciousness
uterus,
is
no
the line
opinion.
that
Sure, but I'm
decides
just saying
whether
that
innocent
you keep
people live
saying
or
like
die.
it's inconvenient. None of these facts are inconvenient. I'm totally
Well, they are
willing to
because
address-
they dispute your like made up definition of when personhood begins.
There is no, the definition of when personhood begins is literally the subject of our debate. There's not a scientific answer to that question.
What I said
Unless
at
you
the
believe in
very
human
beginning
rights.
is
No,
when
that's
you
human
when you
rights are not
separ-
science.
Excuse me.
That's-
If you separate when human beings come into
is that mechanical
existence-
engineering? When do you learn human
Excuse
rights?
me.
Sorry, go
Well, if you separate when human beings come into existence
Okay.
and personhood, and you make it two different lines,
Mm-hmm.
it's always bad. Bad things have always happened throughout human history when we tried to separate human beings from personhood. It's always a slippery slope, and bad things always happen, is what we're saying.
Destiny,
The reason, one more comment.
Don't interrupt him.
The reason science is very important for the
Yeah, I
pro-life
agree, yeah.
debate is because, and the question of human rights is because human rights are about the humans that have rights that are universal. So all humans, if you're a member of the human family, you have these rights. And I think earlier you did, kind of.
You keep saying
kind
that,
of
but we don't.
timidly
No.
agree.
You
kind of
have
agreed
more
to- Can I just
qualifiers.
finish, Justin?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You
My
did.
bad.
You
Go
did
ahead.
kind of. It's all right. You did kind of agree. I think you agreed that we have the right as humans to not be killed, right?
No, there
but you
has to be
don't
more
believe in human rights.
qualifications.
But I think
There needs to be more
But he didn't even
qualifications. It's not
fully
just
agree
humans, because we
with
agree
all.
that corpses, for instance, don't
Well,
get protection.
So
there has to be more qualifiers than
Destiny,
that. Yeah.
I think your position is not human rights. It's conscious rights. That you have to be you have to have consciousness, and not just have consciousness. You can have it taken away from you and it come back to it, but that is okay. But if the child hasn't developed yet, then that's okay. That's your line.
And Destiny, do you
slippery
want to answer
slope.
the question, just when does life begin?
When does life begin, or when did they become a person?
When does human life begin, Destiny?
Whatever your sense of the question
the
is.
personhood thing that I'm looking at.
No, let's talk about science for a second. When does human life begin? I answer the question, you answer it.
If you're talking about like when does a unique genetic code happen, it's right at the union. It's right at the moment of conception.
When two parts become a whole.
Correct.
Excellent.
Finally, we agree on something.
That's
when human life comes into
hold on.
existence.
Yeah, that's called a scientific fact.
That's what we've been saying. In the
I
pro-life
understand.
movement.
Let me catch
Well,
you
there
up
are
to
a
the
lot of pro-abortion
conversation.
people who don't
Sure,
agree with
I
that.
understand. Let me
Interestingly,
catch you up to the
yeah.
conversation. We're not having a scientific discussion on when genomes are formed. We're having a moral philosophy discussion on when does something get the protections of being a person.
Correct.
Right?
And our position is simple. And what Kristen was saying earlier is that throughout human history, there have been many times when groups of humans, groups of humans were considered non-persons, right?
I don't know what this
you're certainly,
am I
well,
going to
you're
get to ask
certainly,
it?
you're certainly
Oh,
familiar
yeah.
with this, Destiny, and I know Kristen
gonna
is.
go
but
back to this
for
question.
example, under the Rwandan genocide or with slavery in our
Yeah,
country,
I understand.
the Holocaust,
that's the
there
next step.
are groups of people who were seen as
It was
humans.
Roe v. Wade, KCV, Planned Parenthood, and
Who
then I
were-
think it was apartheid in
Just to
South
finish,
Africa.
there were
No, actually, I think
human
Roe versus Wade came from that.
There were
I think,
human beings.
might have been.
There
Because they were
hum-
inspired by the Nazis, right?
Just
They
to
were
clarify,
like-
there were human beings that were seen as non-persons, and that
True.
opened the door to huge injustices.
Okay.
And similarly today, we see humans in the womb at this arbitrary line, and you're one among many. I mean, other people say, well, right before birth is when they become human, or viability is when they become human,
haven't
or
made
heartbeat
either
is
of
when
those
they become
arguments.
human.
That's good,
There's a lot of different variations.
I think
because
those are all really bad arguments.
Hold on, just let her finish.
well,
Just let her
I
finish.
agree,
So
and I
sorry,
think
my bad.
consciousness is a terrible argument too,
think it's a
because you
great
can't
argument.
assign
That's your opinion.
the development of
Obviously,
a human.
that's why I'm representing
And your
it.
opinion's wrong.
And back to the toddler and the adolescent, because you you had a clever move there, Destiny. You were saying, well, an adolescent has rights, like signing a contract that a toddler doesn't have. So therefore, I think your next conclusion of that was, if you're preborn in the womb
I could
before
also tell you my
consciousness-
conclusion. You don't have to guess because I'm here.
Okay. I mean, feel free to give it. But it was an interesting position, because what I was trying to get to in that conversation before I got a little bit derailed there is, do you think that your age or your development as a human means you are more or less entitled to equal protection under law for basic human rights, including the right to not be killed?
if that development, when you say including the rights to not be killed,
that fundamental right to life. Let's just talk about only that right. Only that right.
Intuition pumping. So
yeah, just I don't know about intuition pumping. Let's just isolate it and just say just the right to not be killed, the right to not be the victim of homicide.
I don't know. I'm not sure. It depends on what kind of deaths we're talking about. So here's a question. For instance, a lot of women have miscarriages, like without even knowing in the first few weeks of getting pregnant. Do you think that those embryos should be rushed to the hospital?
Well, if the embryo is dead, no. I mean,
okay, but do you think that like any woman, do you think we should start locking every single woman that has sex into some sort of facility to check for early miscarriages like that? Because if it is true, wouldn't that be the equivalent of a woman leaving a child starving to death on their floor?
No, absolutely not.
No.
How dare you?
Hold on, can you answer the question?
How dare you?
Because what you're talking about right now is essentially the real genocide of children is all the children being miscarried right now in the first few weeks of development. That's
miscarriage to not feeding my child.
Why? It should be the same thing.
No. It's not.
Why is it not?
Well, you obviously.
It's not because.
Oh my gosh.
It's not because.
Well, hold on. You're telling
every
me.
woman
Hold
in
on.
America
if you want to
who's
extend
just
human
had
protections all the way to the very beginning, the very moment of conception, if you want to go all the way to the moment of conception, then that means that a woman who just whatever kind of miscarries in the first, second, or third week and doesn't realize it, that is the same as like, oops, somebody dropped their child down the stairs and they died.
No, that is absolutely not the same. Do you understand science of what happens in a miscarriage? An unattended miscarriage?
Unattended. That's why I'm saying we should lock them up after they have sex.
I don't think your argument doesn't make any sense.
My argument makes perfect sense.
No,
if you truly
lock
believe,
a woman up,
it's actually very
heinous. It might be more likely to miscarry because of the stress.
I know it
which
hurts
is why I
because
don't
it
think we
obviously
should jail
demonstrates
pregnant
another
women,
huge
quite
flaw.
frankly.
If you believe that the moment of no, you can't right now. If you believe that at the moment of conception you've created a unique human being, then that means that right now you should be in tears because at every moment women that are engaged. In fact, you could probably make the argument that sex without the intention of immediately going to a hospital is probably immoral because you're engaging in some activity that might result in the death of a child in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks because you don't know if you're going to have a miscarriage. Every single time a woman has sex, she's probably being rushed to the hospital immediately after just to make sure that whatever fetus might be there is absolutely protected.
I don't think.
Let me answer your question.
That is misogyny because what you're saying is women cannot gestate human beings in the womb and be productive citizens of our society.
They shouldn't.
That is misogyny.
So Destiny, I don't know
exactly what.
Hold on, let's let Lila go.
Okay, I don't know. I think your question might betray perhaps a little ignorance about how pregnancy works.
Okay, inform me,
please. Because if a woman gets pregnant, rushing her to the hospital is not going to magically prevent a miscarriage that she may or may not have. Miscarriages happen for a lot of different reasons. And I would argue, especially for imprisonment as an example, imprisoning a woman who's pregnant, which I'm opposed to, by the way, that additional stress could add to the miscarriage. So if you grabbed a woman after she had sex and might be pregnant and dragged her off to a hospital, that might actually induce stress in her. And
but there's also potentially things, there's behaviors a woman could engage in that would
that.
Increase the risk of miscarriage, especially if she doesn't know she's pregnant, right? Maybe a woman drinks.
Say that one more time.
There might be behaviors that a woman could engage in if she is pregnant that would increase the risk of pregnancy. However, that means that you could have sex with a condom and with birth control, and you might actually get pregnant. So if a woman is having sex and she starts drinking or whatever, she could be murdering a child right then and there.
Destiny, let me answer that.
Yeah.
That's why we have recommendations, from the FDA that women who are pregnant should not drink alcohol.
No. You don't even know if you're pregnant yet, though. That's the whole deal.
That's different.
That's the difference between direct and indirect actions, though, right?
It doesn't get much more direct than doing things to your body that harms your child.
If a woman is pregnant and does not know she's pregnant, say she just conceived and she goes and celebrates her 20th birthday at a bar, 21st birthday at a bar, and she drinks a whole bunch, and she miscarries, no one would say
you murdered your child.
You murdered your child.
Of course
no one
you
would
did.
say that. That's not that was not the intent.
It doesn't matter what the intent is. You think the kid cares what the intent is? You've murdered a child.
Abortion. What is abortion? Abortion is the direct, intentional killing of an innocent human.
Do you think from the perspective of the fetus, do you think it cares if it was an accident or intentional that it was
action? We're arguing about the morality of abortion, which you've informed me like 5 times because you don't want to talk about science.
Sure, but what I'm saying is that if you think that from the moment of conception,
I will say, I'll give you this, Destiny. If you're having sex. And this actually goes to a related conversation to the abortion conversation, but that's very important. I think,
anyways, you guys didn't answer any of my other questions.
I have a question, actually.
I think your question kind of gets into the sexual ethics world, which I think is important. So we could go there.
Sure.
If you're having heterosexual sex.
Am I allowed to ask any of my questions because none of them got answered?
Well, I would argue.
Do you want to reiterate them?
Sure, I had like 3 really basic ones.
Can I answer his little hypothetical, though, really quick?
Okay.
Sure. About the mass genocide of
Well, no, it was more about, if you're having sex, should you be heavily heavily drinking afterwards, I think was where you're going with that. And I would say, no, you shouldn't actually. I don't think, and this is part of our society's problem today, post-sexual revolution, is we have separated sex from procreation and from relationship.
Okay.
And because of that, we have the abortion rate of 2,500 children killed every day by abortion. Because of that, we have mass unhappiness. We have breakdown among male-female relationships. People actually are having less sex in many ways than before. Pornography use is spiking, and it's all because we've forgotten what sex is designed for, which is intimacy and new life. So I would be against a culture, and I am against acts where people are just being promiscuous, having sex, not
Literally
really caring.
none of that has
And then-
anything to do with what I said, because everything that I described happened could literally happen within a marriage where a woman gets pregnant, doesn't realize it, has some alcohol.
Then I'll answer to that too.
Hold on,
Actually, let me answer that too, because I'm married.
I'm just saying that nothing what I gave had anything to do with the sex culture or anything else.
Then thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
I can relate to your question. I'm married. We hope to have another baby. And yes, when I know if I might be fertile, I might be getting pregnant soon. Yeah, I'm not going to be drinking gin and tonics, because I might be getting pregnant and I want to have my body be as hospitable as possible for that baby. And I think that would be the prudent thing to do. And that's another reason if as a woman and you're having
we weren't
sex, you
talking
might
about
get
what was
pregnant
prudent or
to
not.
be-
We were talking about like moral rights or wrongs. But
Well, I think it would be morally irresponsible, yes, to be getting drunk when you may be getting pregnant, yes.
on the same level as like murdering a child, right?
Creating a new human being is a
there's
logical
a bit of a
Hold on,
outcome
just one microphone
of
at a time,
heterosexual
please.
sex. And so that's what Lila is saying, is that if you're engaging in heterosexual sex, you have to be aware that one of the very biological outcomes of that behavior, of that choice you've made, is creating a unique, whole living human life. So therefore, you have consented to the fact that unique, whole living life may come into existence by engaging in that act knowingly.
Gotcha. Okay.
Destiny, did you have more?
I said it very slow,
very
very
similar
clear.
questions.
Did
Do
you
we
have-
agree that is puberty a real thing?
Absolutely, puberty is a real thing.
Okay. When does it happen?
It's a range.
Oh, hold on. I know
where he's going. I know he's
Can
going
I
with
just
it.
make a
Go ahead,
comment here?
Lila.
But that's
There is-
fundamentally
hold on,
different
there's-
between.
Hold on. Let me
let's
just.
let Lila go.
There's
Can
an
I answer this?
absolutely. There's
Can I answer this? This is my question.
Sure.
Lila, like, I love you, but you don't let me answer any questions.
Yeah, Lila.
All right,
Jesus.
So,
So
I'm just
rude.
gonna, like,
You're being misogynistic.
I mean, I think it's been pretty.
I've been trying to be.
I think they're
different.
both. I think they're both
Kristen,
misogynistic.
We
Okay.
need hand signals. No. I understand where the question was. You brought this up earlier about puberty. Yes, absolutely, puberty is a real thing. I have 2 pre-teens right now.
Okay.
I'm reminded every day that puberty is a real thing. And absolutely it onsets at different ages based on the environment, based on a child's experiences or stress that the child may be going through, or the genetic conditions that a child may have. But that's not an equivalent for saying, well, we don't know when human life begins, when we know it actually begins, and we've already proven as a scientific fact begins at the moment of conception. Therefore, we can kill a human being.
Okay. So
It
all
is
I'm
not
trying
the
to
same.
illustrate to you is that
Can I
you
answer
believe
now?
in.
No, is that okay?
Yes,
Okay.
Lila, go
All right,
ahead.
add in
And
what
then
I
we'll
did
have you
too.
come in. We'll have you come in. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Lila. Go
Kristen.
ahead.
So I would just say, yes, there is a sliding time frame from when someone might undergo puberty. But if you are basing a decision about whether or not you can kill an innocent prepubescent or pubescent child, then I would say your standard of puberty shouldn't matter. Similarly to your standard, your unjust standard of consciousness to demand that a baby that's not fully developed yet has to be developed in order to be protected. And I think that's age discrimination.
Gotcha. Okay. So all I'm trying to point out is
Do you agree you are age discriminatory, by the way? Do you agree? 'Cause
I
you
am
said
age.
that.
Do you think? Are you age discriminatory?
So you're age discriminatory about when human beings should have
I'm age
the right to
discriminatory
live.
about a lot of different things.
So you believe that you are age discriminatory about
I'm
when human beings-
developmentally discriminatory.
Typically, developmental discrimination is for the protection of the less developed person. It's
Or it
not
could
for
be
the
for the
manipulation.
protection of a mother that doesn't want to have a pregnancy
It's
too.
not
There
for
is
the-
another
it's
person
not
in the
for the
equation here, you know.
manipulation and the
There
harm
absolutely
of
is
the
not.
less
Manipulation or harm
developed
of the
person.
mother who's being forced to be a breeding factory for a child.
Do you know what an abortion
I can
is?
morally loathe
Wait,
this just the other way if you want. If you want to
Jesse,
play that game, I could do that.
Do
all
you
day.
know
I
what
think your
happens
argument
when-
actually isn't consciousness. I think you are making a bodily autonomy argument.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. That's the
You
dumbest argument in the
absolutely
world.
are, because you said the mother has a pregnancy. No, the mother.
No, I'm just trying to show
mother
you that
has a
there, if you
human
want to
being
morally loathe things like
developing within her.
murder of a child, well, then I'm going to say, well, forcing a
Well,
mom
you
to be a
didn't agree
breeding
with
machine.
me about my analogy about artificial wombs.
What I didn't agree, I rejected
would-
it because I said it was dumb because viability has no impact whatsoever on my feelings on whether or not a fetus is endowed
But
with
I
rights
think
for human life or not.
Kristen is correct in that you are sort of talking out of both sides of your mouth a little bit here.
Absolutely not. Right now, I'm struggling to talk out of one side of my mouth.
On the one hand, Destiny, you're saying that it shouldn't matter whether or not the mother wants the baby or doesn't want the baby if the baby is conscious. And on the other hand, you're saying actually the mother's desire to have or not have that baby, being forced to birth that baby, actually does matter. So that's a little bit of a contradiction.
So it's not a contradiction at all. Whether or not somebody wants to have a child or not is not the same as when does the child get moral protections. Those are two fundamentally separate questions.
You're saying you
However,
should not be,
I might want
forced to give birth. You were using that language.
No, well, because you're using the language of like killing a child.
No, you're ending the life of an innocent human being that is a child.
Thank you for illustrating my point. Yes, yes.
So
if you're going
why are you so offended? Why are you so offended by the word child?
I'm not offended because when you say child, it's not that it's triggering me.
It's absolutely triggering you because you've said it like 6 times.
Because you're begging the question.
Are you triggered, Destiny? Confirm or deny? Are you triggered?
Okay.
So I actually, you know what? I have
the problem is that right now, the point of our debate, it's kind of like going to a self-defense trial and having the people that you killed being called victims.
Well, hold on,
right?
hold on. You're the one who's advocating for the positive right to kill a child in the womb.
Okay.
You're the one advocating for that.
Okay.
We're advocating to say you can't kill a child. So I'm
just trying to explain why calling it a child is.
But why does that bother you?
I'd actually like to understand.
It bothers me because the subject of the debate is whether or not it is a child. So if you call it a child, you're already presupposing the most difficult part of the conversation, which is begging the question.
But I think, but that's a contradiction too, Destiny. Because
it's not a contradiction.
It is because you just said you said that you become a person. At consciousness, this arbitrary line that you've drawn that's not even clear.
Yeah.
And
no, it's very clear.
But you never
Who
were
hasn't
upset.
named
you
any
never talked about when
biologist,
childhood began. So let's actually talk about that.
When is a
Does
what?
childhood begin at a different time than when personhood begins?
Childhood is whatever you want. Some childhood begins when you see your first Sesame Street episode. I don't know. What does childhood mean?
Okay, when does a child become a child? When is it okay to call a preborn life a child in your
I don't know. That's a semantic question. I'm not really
interested in. So why are you upset
in.
about us using the word if you don't really have an
Because
opinion
we're not just
on it?
having semantic disagreements. We're having like very discrete disagreements on morality over when somebody should be.
Then? When do you think
My disagreement is I don't think that it becomes a person at conception that's endowed with human rights.
But you just said you don't like us using the word child. When does the life become a child?
You know, because now you just asked me about childhood and now you're asking child. The reason why we're arguing over
when you start having your childhood, when you start becoming a child.
Let me know when I
is
can
that?
fully answer the question, okay?
Please tell me.
Okay. We're having a conversation right now about when something is endowed with like moral consideration. When
I'm
does
asking
something
you a pretty simple question, actually.
Are you a liar?
I'm just asking.
I asked you if I could finish. You said I could, and now you cut me off.
Let's let
you
Destiny
lied to me.
finish
Okay, let me finish the question. Don't lie,
it.
because you'll lose moral consideration. Okay. All right. No. If the subject of the debate is when does a fetus become a person? Okay. Child is another word for person. So when you say,
okay, that's
do
what I
you
was
think
trying to
it's
clarify.
okay? When you say, do you think it's
finish.
okay to kill a child? Obviously, the answer is no. I don't think it's okay to kill a child. But that's not the conversation we're having. The conversation we're having is when is something considered a child? So that's why I'm obviously going to push when you say you're saying we should kill children at 2 weeks old. I don't know, a fetus, whatever you want to call it.
But do you know what the Latin word fetus means?
I don't care. I'm not Latin.
It means young one. It's another word for child.
That's great. There are young ones that are puppies. That doesn't have any
child.
bearing on me. You're not going to etymologically like win the debate against me.
So just
do you
to
think
clarify,
puppies get consciousness at a certain point?
Not human
just
consciousness,
to clarify,
no.
we're only allowed to call a human
question.
life a child at Destiny's arbitrary line of consciousness. Is
what
that
I'm
correct?
saying is that
because you're very offended when we use this term, so I'm trying to understand when it is in your book correct to use
if
it.
anybody is triggered in this room, it is not me. Okay.
That's good.
So it's funny that you keep using the offended line. I'm used to the you mad
you
bros.
disagree strongly.
No, I don't disagree. You're just like presupposing the argument. That's the
it's
issue.
It's pissing you off when we use the word child, is what we're saying.
Confirm or deny? Are you pissed off, Destiny?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
You know what? I
like
actually.
Can I? Wait, no, hold on.
Whoa,
it's the same thing as you guys, because I know you guys, and I guess maybe this is just like in your brain, is how you approach these conversations. But I know you guys get frustrated when people argue with you, and you're like, you just want to take rights away from the mom. Oh, so you're trying to make moms slaves? You're turning moms into baby factories? Yeah. That would be if I wanted to engage in the same style of conversation you're engaging in. I would just say that over and over again. Why do you want to make moms baby factories? Why do you want to make moms slaves? You know what is really problematic is when we take away rights from certain groups of people and we force them to do things with their bodies that they don't want to. A lot of eugenics was done that way. A lot of the Nazi concentration camps done that way. In Japan, Unit 343 did a lot of weird things like that, or whatever the fuck.
Except in the cases of sex,
if you're gonna make make the argument that like,
engaged in
oh,
the
well,
behavior.
viewing people as people sometimes and not as really problematic, then I'll say, okay, well, restricting rights from people, especially women, has also been really problematic historically.
So-
welcome to women's suffrage. Welcome to women being able to own property. Welcome to women having access to birth control.
Thank you
welcome
for
to women
explaining
being able
women's
to do
rights to
No
us.
problem. I'll do it since
Appreciate
you guys have the problem with the
So-
understanding.
yeah,
So
thank you.
but I'm saying I'm not doing that because that's boring to me. Because obviously, if you guys thought that a fetus wasn't a human life, then you would obviously agree with me. And if I agree that a fetus was a human life, I would obviously agree with you. So
wait,
when
wait,
you
you
use
don't believe a
normatively
fetus-
Let him
loaded terms,
finish. Let him
This is
when
an
you
important
use-
point.
when you use normatively loaded terms like murder a child or commit homicide, then all you're doing is you're begging the
You
question.
don't- no,
Because
they're not.
obviously,
Okay.
nobody at this table and nobody in this room believes in killing children or committing homicide
Okay.
against children.
Except
the
that
question
I have
is,
a question for
when does
Destiny.
it become a child? That's
I
the
have a
whole
question
thing.
for you though,
I-
because you just said when a fetus becomes a human being. When does the fetus become a human being, Destiny?
The personhood comes when the conscious experience starts, which is
Okay.
about
But
20 to 24 weeks.
wait.
Yeah.
Wait. Biology says moment of conception, life begins.
Biology does not tell you-
No,
hold on, wait,
stop.
I'm not-
Stop. Excuse me.
Biology does
Excuse
not
me.
tell
I'm
you when
gonna start
human
talking to you
rights-
like I talk to my 4 boys. Excuse me.
Can we,
Human
hold
life
on,
comes into
Hold on,
existence at the
Kristen,
moment
Kristen,
of
Kristen,
conception.
one
No, let her
sec,
do it.
Kristen,
Go
one sec, one sec.
Yeah.
If we can, and you know, there's been some comments about this. I would like everybody here at the table to have an opportunity to speak. So if we can
Everybody,
including Kiki, yes. So if we can try to limit the interruptions, let people finish their thought, and then go on. I'd like Destiny to have time to speak. I'd like Lila to have time to speak. Kristen, you as well. Go ahead, Kristen.
Fetus. When does the fetus become a human being? Because biology says, biologists confirm, 96% confirm, that the moment of conception, you became a human being. You became a member of our species. But you kept saying the word, it's not a human being. So when does the child or entity or whatever term you want to use that doesn't trigger you in the womb become a human being?
20 to 24 weeks.
So you're actually, wait a minute. This is very important because you didn't say this at the beginning of the debate. Beginning of the debate, you were making a moral argument, but you weren't saying that
He
it
just
wasn't a
changed
human
his
being.
position from person to human being.
This is what Lila and I were exactly. This is what I pointed out like 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
That you are using an argument saying that it's consciousness, that consciousness gives that human being these special personhood rights not to be killed. But I made the argument a while back that you aren't really making that argument because when I presented a couple other scenarios to you, you wouldn't agree with me. But the argument, what you just said...
What was the scenario where I didn't
stop.
agree?
The argument you just said was it wasn't a human being. You just said, for everybody here, that it becomes a human being at 20, 24 weeks.
Okay.
That is scientifically unsound because what we've already proven to you is that the moment of conception, a unique human being comes into existence. Do you agree with me that a human being is present in a mother's womb at the moment of conception?
If you want to define human being as unique genetic code that appears, then we can call that a human being. But the conversation that we're having right now is not about what a human being is. The conversation we're having is when does something get granted rights or moral consideration.
So I think you
And
need
I
to be
would
careful
say
with your terms then. Because
Hold
you
on.
kept saying
you're the
human
one that's
being.
mixing everything up. I've been pretty clear, and I'll continue to be clear, because you're trying to ask me, yes or no, when does it become a human being? And if you're defining human being as the thing that gets rights, then I'll say it 20 to 24 weeks. The thing that I've said over and over again, and if you want, I can write this word down. What I am talking about, and I've used this term before, is person or personhood.
Right.
And I think that a person is not a collection of cells. A person is not some body parts. A person is not something that responds to pain or heart pumping blood. When we think of people or persons, we think of people that are having subjective conscious experiences like we have now.
So I have a
when we
question.
think of
What
when somebody
experiences?
dies, we think of that subjective conscious experience ending. That's why earlier the question that I asked that I will never get an answer to, and I understand why you won't answer it. I asked you, if a
Which we
person is going to be in a coma for the rest of their life, will never wake up, can you kill them? The answer is obviously yes, but the reason why you won't say that that's okay is
No.
because a comatose person possesses every single
will answer the
thing
question
that
for
the
you.
pre-conscious fetus has.
Let me answer the
So if you
question.
can kill that comatose person, you can probably kill the
No,
pre-conscious
you're not
fetus.
killing.
But the problem
I think it's
is
wrong
that you
to
won't
take a
answer that
gun
question
and
because of
kill
that.
the
Yeah.
person in a coma. I think it would be wrong to take sofa clamp and dismember that person
100%.
limb from limb who's in a coma. I think it's wrong to take a needle and insert digoxin into that person's heart who's in a coma and cause a cardiac arrest. All things that happen during abortion, by the way. We would never argue that a person who's in a coma, whether we know they're brain
What
dead or
abortion
they're
is
not
shooting
brain
a
dead, we
baby?
don't know because we don't have an actual scenario we're talking
Watching a
about
stupid
here.
bit.
But we would never say you actively kill a person who's in a coma. What Lila said, what
I agree
I've
with
said,
that. I agree.
is you can actually remove care, you can remove the
I've already
breathing
demonstrated
apparatus
that you don't
to
agree with
see
this
if
argument.
the person.
This is not an argument that you agree
No,
with.
you just said we didn't answer the argument in your question, but we did.
Yeah,
Well, what
okay.
happened was there was a bit of filibustering where
Sure.
I was
If
trying
you want,
to
we
get
can very
clarification.
clearly
You
get
don't
to
like
the bottom
our
of this, or
answer,
we can
Destiny.
ramble on to irrelevant things. Do you
You
want to
just
get to the
don't.
bottom
You
of
don't
this?
like our answer, so
Okay.
you say we didn't
So
answer your
what you're
question.
doing is you're pointing out a difference. So sometimes in moral philosophy, people want to point to the difference between doing and allowing harm, and there might be a fundamental moral difference between doing harm to somebody versus allowing harm to somebody.
It
And you're
depends
trying-
what you mean by
you're-
those actions.
Sure, you're trying to draw some difference here between doing and allowing harm. However, none of us here believe that that matters in this case, right? Because if you look at a child, none of us here would say that one is morally okay to allow harm versus one is morally okay to do harm.
Destiny,
For instance,
it-
if you had a child that was connected to an insulin tube or a feeding pump because they had issues with digestion or feeding, you wouldn't say that, like, okay, actively killing the child is wrong, but if you just disconnected their insulin pump, that would be okay because you're passively killing the child. We would say no, they have a fundamental right to survive and be alive, and you would say the same thing to a person connected to a machine, because if a person was in a coma, or not in a coma, let's say they were just unconscious, okay, and we knew they were going to wake up in 2 weeks, or there was a high likelihood of it, we would say it's probably unethical to unattach that person to the machine, even if all they did was sit there and starve to death.
Destiny,
So this weird description that you're trying to, or this weird dichotomy you're trying to make between doing versus allowing harm doesn't apply here when we talk about moral consideration
It
of different
absolutely
types.
I think you're
when
making.
talking
I think you're. I think
Don't
there's
say
a
false analogy
there's
again.
I think there's an oversimplification here when you're talking about moral philosophy, because
Yeah.
a lot of it goes into who has the responsibility, what my responsibilities and duties are to you.
That's right.
So if I am a doctor and my responsibility and duty is to my patient, and I have a child who's getting an insulin treatment, yes, it would be homicidal of me to rip the treatment away from the child.
Yes.
If I am a parent and my duty and responsibility as a parent is to provide nourishment for my child, and I rip that nourishment away from my child, then yes, that would be a potentially a homicidal act. It could lead to death, and it certainly would be a case of neglect and perhaps abuse. So similarly, if I, as a parent, have these responsibilities to my children, then I have to, it would be morally wrong for me to not live out those responsibilities. And every child is dependent on his or her mother. I do not suddenly become a child or a person at consciousness. We don't even have a clear line of when that is. We haven't been able to nail that down.
You still can't tell us.
And in addition, consciousness, you can go in and out of consciousness.
Sure. So
and
here's
in
the-
addition, a child
Okay.
before developing consciousness only needs time to
Sure.
develop that
So here's
consciousness.
the wait. This is
So
the most
you're-
important question.
One
The
thing.
most
One thing.
important
One
question.
thing. No, I'll let you make your point, but after you make your point, allow me to just come in, and I have
Okay.
a couple questions I need
Most
to ask.
important
Go ahead.
question then.
Well,
When you
can
have
you
a
respond
person,
to what I said, though? I'm curious your thoughts on what I just said.
it,
Do you
I don't
disagree
even
with
know
what I
there's
said?
anything to respond to. There's nothing.
Do you agree with it? Disagree?
When you start saying things like you should take care of children, you can't pull away care from children. Obviously, I agree, but
Okay.
that's all begging the question. We all agree on that. The question is, when do they become children? So there's nothing.
No,
to
but
respond to.
what do you think about the distinction of I have the potential, I have the capacity for consciousness, I only need time for that to be realized. Similar, I'm under an anesthetic, I can have the capacity for
Okay.
consciousness. It's not realized because I'm under anesthetic. In both cases, it's still wrong to kill.
There's a difference. You're
Why?
not developing the conscious.
Why does that difference matter, Destiny?
Because there's a difference between a thing
I
and
know
a thing
there's a
something.
difference, but why does
Hold
the
on.
difference
Let him
matter?
finish. Let him
Oh,
finish.
I am getting triggered. You're right. I'm getting triggered. Okay.
I know.
Hold on.
We all know Destiny.
By
Okay,
what?
honey.
The arguments
floor
or
is
the
yours.
interruptions?
Because she knows her argument is bad, and that's why she won't let me finish her point. So
Incorrect.
it's triggering the fuck out of me. Okay.
Well, let's just let Destiny respond. Go ahead, Destiny. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the key money question that I'm going to ask is if you have a person connected at end of life care, when does it become ethical to disconnect them?
You didn't answer.
Yes,
I'll answer that.
Lila's question.
But why does your difference matter?
Get up in their business.
Why does what difference matter?
The difference of the
difference,
child.
You're not even going to let me finish, but I'll tell you the difference. The difference is there's a difference between a thing and a thing that something will become. Those are two fundamentally different things. So when you say, what's the difference between a fetus that hasn't developed the parts to have consciousness yet versus what's the difference
Excuse
between
me, the fetus-
I told you
Wait.
she wouldn't let me finish. Versus what's the difference
just
between
let
me
him
who's
finish, let him
currently
finish.
unconscious and will become conscious later after anesthesia will wake up. The difference is you're not developing the capacity to have consciousness. There's a continuation of a prior conscious experience. All the parts are there to create a conscious experience. They're just temporarily
Destiny.
temporarily
That's the fetus,
alleviated. They're
Destiny.
just no, it's not, because
Hold
the
on,
fetus
let
has
him finish,
never
let him
been
finish.
conscious and doesn't have the parts to deploy the
him
conscious experience. So there's fundamentally a difference. Was that 2 or 3 interruptions that I
was
said
really
were going to
good
happen, right?
song.
There's fundamentally a difference between a thing doesn't even have the capability to have a conscious experience versus somebody else's is temporarily abated by a drug. That is the
Why-
difference.
Thank you for that.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Why
No
does the
problem.
continuation of consciousness matter?
The continuation matters because the thing I'm valuing is the underlying machinery that has the capacity to deploy a conscious
Why?
experience. Why? Because in all the intuition of when we talk about other people and
Intuition?
things, it seems like, well, ultimately, that's kind of where our morals come
Annabelle.
from, don't they? Right? And at the end of the day, At the end of the day, the thing that we seem to be valuing in other people seems to be the subjective experience that we're all having with each other.
Okay.
That seems to be the case.
Under your logic, Destiny.
Yes, tell me.
A newborn child whose consciousness, their memories, they won't even have memories as a newborn.
Who's talking about memories?
Because
Hold on, just let
your
her finish.
consciousness as a newborn child and even your consciousness as a 1-year-old is very different than your consciousness as a Destiny, however old you are.
Okay.
Are you less of a human, less of a person, excuse me, because that's the word you're using here. Are you less of a person because you have less consciousness?
Yeah, you might be.
Okay, interesting. That's an
But just because
interesting
you're less of a
acknowledgement.
person doesn't necessarily
So-
mean that you have like not that fundamental
So
right to be protected as a life.
If you are less of a person,
Just like a person who's prepubescent is less of a person in terms of like being like endowed with all the rights of society.
Sure, so
but
if
they
a-
still have the right to life to not be murdered.
So
yeah.
let's walk this forward. Then
Okay.
if you're a 1-year-old
Slowly.
and you're a little bit less of a person than a 20-year-old, say, should you have less? Are your human rights less as a 1-year-old than your human rights as a 20-year-old? Where does that
Your
distinction
human rights
matter when
are
it comes
less
to
as a
rights?
1-year-old, yes. But in
Your
terms of like
human
right
rights.
to be killed,
Wait. Human rights are universal and inalienable. They're for everyone. We're not talking about rights when you turn 18 to vote. We're talking about your universal inalienable rights. The idea of a human right is we all share them, and they can't be taken away from us.
Because we're human.
okay,
Maybe
but
we-
you,
we maybe should have defined that at
recognize
the
that there's a
beginning.
fundamentally different set of like rights for children than there are
Well,
for
I
adults.
think-
Now, if you want to talk about like right to not be killed, that's why
Well,
I keep
you're-
clarifying. That's why I keep specifying.
Hello. Howdy. Good, how are you? Nice, how'd it go? We're doing what? Is it like the next step up? Oh, okay. I thought you were on fives. Nice. Alright, chat. I think I'm gonna go for a stroll here.